Let's kick today's episode off with a little game called Who Am I? Who am I? I can sometimes wear many masks. Anger, anxiety, silence, sometimes perfectionism. I can oftentimes show up when things feel unsafe, even if they're not. I can convince you to stay alert, stay guarded, stay small. I started out as protection, but now I might be holding you back. Who am I? If you guessed trauma, then you're absolutely right. Today's episode, we're going to talk about the impacts of trauma on the brain and how amazing cutting-edge technologies and solutions like brain mapping and neurofeedback can help us heal and thrive. So if you're someone who's experienced trauma yourself, you work with others who have, or you're just curious, today's episode is for you. Hey, Mental Fitness Matters family. Welcome to the Mental Fitness Matters show. Thank you for joining us. Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been with me for a while, welcome. My name is Tracy Alston. I am your host of the Mental Fitness Matters show. In case this is your first time here, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself, about what we do, and how the things on the Mental Fitness Matters show can help you thrive and improve your mental health and wellness. My background, I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor. I'm board certified in what's called bio and neurofeedback. I'm a mental fitness consultant. I'm a graduate of Wake Forest University. Go Deeks, where I played college basketball. I'm also the founder of two companies, New Mentality and Mental Edge Fitness Solutions. My passion, my purpose is really to educate, to inspire, and to provide solutions to improving our overall mental health and wellness. So welcome. So again, if this is your first time, I'm so glad to have you. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about understanding trauma and the impact that it has on our brain and our brain health. Trauma is real, so whether you have experienced trauma yourself, whether you know somebody who has, it really can impact us in different ways. It's really a personal experience, and it depends on how your nervous system responds. And so what I'm going to talk about today are common types of trauma, where trauma impacts the brain, how those things may show up in your mind and body, but most importantly, what are some innovative tools and solutions that we can use to heal and deal with the traumas that we face and the adversities that we face so it no longer continues to hold you back. So the first place I'm going to start, guys, is the common types of trauma. When we think about trauma, it doesn't look the same. I know when I first kind of got into the mental health space, which was over a decade ago, like I said, I'm a licensed clinician. And so we deal a lot with post-traumatic stress disorders. We worked with a lot of veterans and people who experienced traumatic events. And that was the first gateway into people talking about extreme or intense traumas. But over time, and what we're learning more about the science, more about the brain, more about the impact, trauma can show up in various ways. And so it doesn't have to be these major life events. There can be smaller things going on underneath the surface that are holding you back. So we're going to first start off with the types of trauma. Acute trauma. It's a single distressing event, like a car accident, a natural disaster, or a sudden loss. So think about that. If you or someone you know has ever been in a car accident and they are now having anxiety around getting back into that car, whether they had a major injury, whether they witnessed somebody lose their life, those types of things stay with you. Your brain doesn't know whether things are real or not. And so it's still going to remember, depending on how that affected you, depending on what was going on in your nervous system, that single car accident or that single event can start to show up in ways that you didn't imagine. Even when you're outside of the car, when you get back in that car, when you notice that those feelings of anxiety or those flashing thoughts that came back from that accident start flooding back in, that could be a sign of an acute trauma. The next type of trauma is chronic trauma. This can be a situation with prolonged or repeated exposure to distressing events, such as ongoing abuse, domestic violence, or living in an area with constant violence. So think about a child that might grow up in a domestic violence situation. They may be in a home where mom and dad are constantly fighting. or they're feeling threatened, or they're afraid. This is a form of chronic trauma. It's repeated exposure to that distressing event over and over and over again. And these things have lasting impacts on your brain and your body. The next type of trauma that we notice is called developmental trauma. Trauma that occurs during critical periods of birth or childhood development, such as neglect, attachment disruption, or emotional abuse. Again, remember, think about these kids. I actually work inside of Department of Social Services in the Statesville area. Again, one of my companies, we do brain mapping, we do neurofeedback, we also provide counseling services. We'll talk more about that later on in this episode. But a lot of the people and the children that we work with have a lot of developmental trauma. They're coming through situations through neglect, abandonment, attachment issues, trust issues. And so they may be taken from their home very early ages and stages of their life. They're in the foster care system and going through adoption. So there's a lot of developmental trauma that we're seeing. And when we think about how our brain is in developmental stages at a very young age, so from 0 all the way to 26, 27, your brain is still developing. So there's crucial things that the brain and body need in order to form the appropriate structures. So developmental trauma is real, and it has an impact on how we feel and how we perform. Another type of trauma, this is more common than not. It's called secondary or vicarious trauma. This is often experienced by helping professionals or caregivers who are regularly exposed to others' trauma. Over time, this can create trauma-like symptoms in the helper. So think about all of our first responders out there. Anybody that's kind of constantly dealing, whether it's a therapist, clinicians, doctors, professionals, anybody in that helping space. If you're constantly exposed to somebody else's trauma, sometimes reliving that, hearing their stories, being the first one on the scene, all those things can be considered secondary or vicarious traumatic experiences. So if you or someone you know are in positions of that, that's your job, that's what you do on a daily basis. It's really important to also kind of do some self-assessment, self-reflection to see if you're taking these things home, okay? So that's called secondary or vicarious trauma. The last type of trauma is called collective or cultural traumas. These traumas can be experienced by groups of people due to systematic oppression, racism, historical violence, or displacement. So no matter the source of trauma, guys, the brain is affected in several ways, okay? No matter which type of trauma we just listed off of there, those types of things do impact your mind and your body, and you could be experiencing symptoms related to the trauma that you experience. What I'm going to talk about next, not only the types of trauma, I think it's important to know what areas of the brain are impacted by the trauma that you experience. The amygdala is the very first component of this. This is your brain's fight, flight, or freeze system. So I don't know if you guys remember when I talked in the very beginning of this episode. It's like sometimes things can be appearing to be there and your system is telling you to be afraid or to be worried, to be stuck, to be fearful when there's no need to. Well, that's the amygdala. That part of your brain is designed to protect you. It's your brain's alarm system, okay? Trauma makes it overactive. It makes you feel constantly on edge. And it's like danger's all around you, even if it's not. And so if you have had a trauma experience or you know somebody who has, and this person is very hypervigilant or on edge all the time, constantly checking their surroundings, their whereabouts, or you're feeling like you're always in danger, this could be a sign that that part of your brain has been affected by that trauma. Fight, flight, or freeze. Your brain is designed to protect you, whether it needs to or not, okay? So this is very real. And if you're experiencing this or you're noticing some symptoms popping up, whether it's your heart racing or feeling on edge or feeling anxious, you may have this part of your brain impacted by the trauma that you've experienced. And that's completely normal. But the most important thing about this, guys, there's something that can be done about it. Another area of the brain that's impacted by trauma is called the hippocampus. This area of the brain is responsible for memory. Trauma can shrink the hippocampus, making it harder to distinguish between past and present threats. This is why flashbacks feel so real. This is why flashbacks feel so real. So if you've been somebody that's been affected by trauma and you're having a hard time sleeping, shutting your mind off, you're constantly reliving that experience, this part of your brain has probably been affected by the trauma. It stores the memories, past, present. So if you're constantly reliving these situations, it's pretty safe to say there's been a trauma impact. And again, the beautiful thing about this, what we're going to talk about here shortly, is that there's something that we can do about it. The next area of the brain, it's called the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain is also impacted by trauma, and it's the part of the brain that helps you regulate your emotions and make decisions. Trauma disrupts its function, so you may find yourself feeling out of control, impulsive, or emotionally overwhelmed. Out of control, impulsive, or emotionally overwhelmed. So when you think about how that prefrontal cortex, the driving force, your decision making, your emotional control, if you've had some type of trauma, you may feel on edge quite often. You may feel like you can't quite get settled. You may feel more restless. You may make very impulsive decisions and you're like, wait a minute, I normally wouldn't do this, or I normally wouldn't say this. And so you may find yourself responding or reacting in ways that are not as normal to you as they have been in the past. And so it's important for you to pay attention to yourself, because each person is a little different in how trauma may manifest for them. And it's really normal to kind of have some type of response. Oftentimes, if you can't articulate it, it may show up in terms of symptoms. So a couple symptoms that we think about when trauma is affecting you, your brain, and your body is anxiety, irritability, sleep issues and disturbances. Sometimes people report difficulty concentrating or remembering things. You might also notice that you feel a little disconnected from yourself. And so when your brain is kind of getting stuck in these fight or flight or freeze moments, symptoms popping up. You might have that anxiety, those racing thoughts, that trouble shutting that mind off. You may feel the brain fog, emotional control issues. So several different ways. The most important thing is to pay attention. Pay attention to yourself, pay attention to your loved ones, pay attention to how you feel, because it matters and it's real. And so now that we know how trauma impacts the brain, now that we know where trauma impacts the brain and the symptoms that come along with that, the beautiful thing about what it is that I do in the space that I hold for the people that we serve in my companies is that we have access to technology that now allows us to see how the brain and the body are responding to stress. What I do on a daily basis for the people that we meet, because it's not only important for us to know that the brain can heal, there's such thing called neuroplasticity, that we can create new brainwave patterns and new brainwave connections to help us feel better, function better, and perform better. How we start with that is called a brain map. So in the work that I do, what's called a QEEG brain mapping assessment. And this assessment looks at about 19 different areas of the brain. We can see how the brain responds to stress. We can see overactivity, meaning if the brain is working too hard or too fast. We can see underactivity, whether the brain is moving too low or too slow. So think about an overactive brain as somebody who may be experiencing racing thoughts, anxiety, trouble shutting that mind off. An underactive brain may be somebody who's having a hard time with focus and attention, concentration, memory, processing, or somebody might have a combination of those things going on at the same time. So that mapping helps give us a baseline on the brain's ability to function, the areas that are performing very well, but most importantly, what areas can benefit from a type of therapy or training called neurofeedback, which we'll talk about in a second. So think about the power in that. In the work that I do on a daily basis, we have people coming into our office. They're expressing how they feel. They may be reporting certain symptoms to us, whether it's trouble sleeping, that was anxiety, the flashbacks. And as they're reporting those symptoms, having a tool like a brain map allows us to not only hear what they're saying, but we can begin to see where exactly has the impact had, exactly is this showing up in terms of the brain's functioning. So this map shows us the areas of the brain that may have been impacted by the trauma, but it also shows the possible symptoms that they could be experiencing based on the brain areas. So it gives us a baseline. Test, don't guess. We don't have to guess what's going on. We don't have to just go based off of what these people may be feeling or experiencing in the moment. We can really begin to see the underlying root of the things that are taking place so that it can guide our next steps. So think about brain map is the first part in the healing journey. It's the first step to getting some answers and to getting ready for your solutions that'll take place after that. So after we do the brain map, we're able to do what's called neurofeedback, which is a non-invasive training tool that teaches your brain how to self-regulate. You're literally training your brain to operate more efficiently, reducing symptoms like anxiety, stress response, emotional impulsivity or reactivity. It's literally like taking your brain to the gym. You practice, you strengthen those neural pathways, and over time, your brain learns how to function better without needing to stay stuck in old trauma patterns. So remember when I talked in the very beginning of this of who am I? Some of those things that could be holding you back. You may feel like you've been through acute trauma, which was maybe just a car accident, right? It might have been that single event where you felt like, man, I should be over this by now. Why can't I get in my car and just drive without feeling my heart race, without getting shortness of breath? Why am I stuck here? Maybe you had more of a chronic trauma. Maybe you grew up in a household full of domestic violence, abuse. You've seen some things that most people haven't, and you've experienced some things that most people haven't, but you're ready to be done with it. So you're asking yourself, why do these things continue to show up in my current life when that happened to me 15 years ago? Trauma's real. The body keeps the score. That's a really good book, by the way. The body keeps the score. Trauma has holding patterns. And so remember, when I was asking, who am I? These things can show up uninvited when you don't expect it. So the beautiful thing about neurofeedback training, now that we have your brain map, guys, we can see these holding patterns. We can see where you're stuck. But most importantly, we can retrain the brain to get out of its own way. It's non-invasive. It's fun. Sessions happen, about 30-minute sessions, twice a week. It's literally like taking your brain to the gym. It's exercise for your brain. So whether you're listening to this via audio, I would also encourage you to go to this via YouTube so you can actually see a visual. We had it on the screen. We had a visual of neurofeedback, what that looks like. But you put a couple sensors on your scalp. And we're going to monitor what your brain is doing in real time while we're monitoring your brain activity. So think about this. It's really fun. It's innovative. If you've ever worn a device that tracks any type of your physiology, whether that's your heart rate, we're wearing devices all the time that maybe measures our sleep performance. I wear a Whoop often. It tracks how well I rest, my eye movement, all of the things that are important for my sleep performance. It gives me information instantly on how well I did. So think about this technology as a means of looking a little bit deeper, going inside, seeing what's going on behind the scenes so that it can give you feedback on how well you're performing. Well, neurofeedback is just feedback from your brain. Now that we've gotten that mapping done, seeing the areas that are performing really well, now we can actually set up a training system from the areas of your brain that are stuck, from the areas of your brain that might not be performing in the ways that are best for you. So we place those sensors on the scalp and we'll put you in front of a computer screen or a monitor. And your only job is to try to watch a movie or play a game or get instant feedback on that screen of when your brain is more focused, more calm, and more alert. So let's say, for example, you're watching a movie while we have those sensors placed on your scalp. If your brain is in an optimal state, meaning it's doing what it needs to do, it's not stuck, it's focused, it's alert, it's calm. If your brain is doing what it needs to do, then if you're watching a movie, for example, that movie screen is going to be very bright. So you'll get instant feedback. You'll see that movie clearly. You'll get feedback that your brain's doing what it needs to, that it's performing well. In the same sense, if your brain is distracted, so let's say you're tired, you're exhausted, you're thinking about all the things you got to do for your day or something that happened last week or something that's coming up. If you're not focused, if you're not in that zone, then on that screen, you're going to get negative feedback, meaning the screen's going to dim out. You're going to get negative feedback that your brain's not doing what it needs to do. So think about this also as feedback. If you're focused, if you're in that zone and you're performing the way that you need to, your screen's going to light up. It's going to show you that instantly on the screen. Think about this, guys, as training. You're training your brain to hit the mark over and over and over again. Over time, with repetition and consistency, your brain creates what's called a new neural pathway. So remember those trauma zones, those places where your brain was getting stuck before, when you were kind of in that stuck space. We're going to retrain your brain to get out of this negative loop, this negative cycle that's no longer serving you. Your brain is designed to protect you, and we are thankful for that. But sometimes when it doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not, you stay stuck in those cycles. And so when you're ready to move on, when you're ready to get relief, when you're ready to heal and deal, neurofeedback can be a tool to help get you over that hump. It's non-invasive. It's proven by science. It's backed by science. It's the number one alternative treatment for ADD and ADHD. It's really impactful for anxiety and sleep and traumatic injuries. So it's a tool. It can be a way to give you quality of life back. So if you've been searching, if you've been looking, if you've been seeking answers, maybe neurofeedback is for you. I would recommend you come in and speak with us. After this show is over, you'll have ways to reach out to us and get you started with the brain map. That's our starting place. So that way we can actually see exactly what's going on, see how we can benefit and how neurofeedback may be a great solution for you. Not only is neurofeedback therapy, so when we think about the therapies that are beneficial for helping us heal, dealing with trauma, I mentioned already brain mapping is that starting place. Neurofeedback is that next space that we can actually be a benefit. But if you're looking for other types of therapies to go along with or complement possible neurofeedback, but maybe you can't get into neurofeedback, I would recommend things like trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. So that's TFCBT, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy is a great modality. Mindfulness and meditation may be some good tools and solutions as well. I oftentimes tell people if they are already in things like trauma-focused CBT, or if they're already doing things like mindfulness and meditation and they're not feeling like they're getting relief, I would recommend don't throw those tools out the door. I would recommend starting your neurofeedback journey. We have remote training available. So if you are not located in our area, which is Mooresville, North Carolina, if you're not located in our area, there are remote solutions available. We can train you from anywhere in the world. If you're not getting relief and you're just trying therapy, traditional therapy, or cognitive behavioral therapy, or trauma-focused therapy, or mindfulness meditation, and you're still feeling stuck, it may not be that those things don't work for you. We may just be putting the cart before the horse. And what I mean by that, sometimes we have to strengthen the brain, get this muscle ready. Your brain's like a muscle. And if you're just throwing on weight, throwing things at it, and we haven't really exercised this muscle to build it up, to be more resilient to the things that we're going to put in place, then you may feel like you're spinning your wheels. You may feel like, hey, I'm defective. Nothing's going to work for me. That's not true. Maybe we're putting the cart before the horse, having a neurofeedback option to get the brain primed and ready to see those areas of the brain that have been impacted by the traumas, starting to train those areas to be more resilient, to get out of its own way, to get out of that negative cycle, and then adding in those tools like the trauma-focused CBT, adding back in the meditation, adding back in the mindfulness. Train your brain, get it stronger first, and then apply the modalities and the therapies that can be really helpful for you to process where you are, to process where you're going, and to set up a path of healing and recovery. Okay, so all is not lost. I've seen several people over the last decade. Again, I've been doing this since 2010, and we've seen people stuck. We've seen people broken. We've seen people at their last resort, and we've seen those people heal. We've seen those people have a new look on life. And so starting with that brain, giving them the tools and the access to the neurofeedback therapy, and then helping them process and recreate their story. It's life-changing. It's healing. It's rewarding. So I hope this has been helpful. So if you or somebody you know is a person that's having secondary or vicarious trauma, maybe they're a helper, maybe they're in the helping field, maybe they're going through secondary stress every single day, or maybe it's somebody like you, yourself. You've experienced some traumas throughout your life and you tried to tuck them away and you've just been like, you know what, maybe I'm just stuck with this. And so you're taking medication after medication after medication to drown out the noise, to stop the thoughts, and you're still struggling. So maybe that's you, or maybe you're just curious and you've learned something today and had no clue that something like neurofeedback or brain mapping was even an option. And you're hearing this for the very first time and you're like, I want to know more. Wherever you are on this thing called life, wherever you're going to be, there's going to be a situation or a moment that makes you feel like I'm stuck, that makes you feel like I don't know how to get beyond this place. There's things that can help you. There's solutions out here. There's technology out here. There's science out here that's showing us forward every single day. And I'm just thankful to be a part of this process and providing this service. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, my name is Tracy Alston. I am the host of Mental Fitness Matters. I am the founder of New Mentality and Mental Edge Fitness Solutions, both companies in Mooresville, North Carolina. Feel free to visit tracyalston.com. That's TracyAlston.com to learn more about myself, but also you can visit and learn more about the companies there. We're ready to help. We're ready to provide you some new opportunities and new situations for your life. So I hope this has been helpful. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. This has been your episode of the Mental Fitness Matters Show, understanding how the brain is impacted by trauma, but most importantly, what we can do about it. Thank you for tuning in. I can't wait to see you guys soon. Have a great day. Shine bright like the stars that we are.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mental Fitness Matters. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. If you found value in today's show, please share it with others. For more information or to connect with Tracy, you can visit her online and on Instagram at tracyalston.com and on LinkedIn and Facebook at Tracy Alston. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.